Hey guys, welcome back to Splints and Whiskey. Sam Patrick here with a friend of mine that didn't quite realize was coming on the show until a couple days ago, and Liz sends me a message. It's like, hey, you know TJ Bishop? I'm like, yeah, I know TJ. I'll chat with him this weekend. First and foremost, happy Father's Day to you, sir, and every other father that's out here right now.
Thanks,
Um,
brother. You as
get,
well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. My kids are in the other room, so hopefully they don't come barging through the door and shatter my green screen and this misconception or the conception of professionalism. Before we jump into this, I want to give a quick shout out to our primary sponsor. So, Splints and Whiskey is brought to you by Life Autonomous Care Consultants. Again, Life Autonomous Care Consultants, LACCINC.com. If you're looking for training supplies, medical simulations, or any medical supplies, they can help you out. So, again, check them out, Life Autonomous Care Consultants. LACCINC.com. All right, welcome TJ Bishop to the show, Splints and Whiskey, with the show where we chat about pre-hospital medicine, military medicine, leadership, and everything in between. I know your history, so if you could give me a quick rundown on what you would like the audience to know, and then I'll pull out the rest of the data from you.
Sure. First and foremost, thanks for having me on. I'm pretty honored to be on a podcast of this magnitude, so and especially with you. I got an
Appreciate
opportunity
it.
to meet Sam in a tactical combat casualty care course I was holding, Joe Base Lewis McCord, a number of years ago. Yeah, that was a phenomenal experience. So, a little bit about myself. I currently live in Friday Harbor, Washington. So I work as the Assistant Chief of Operations and Training for San Juan Island EMS, which is a rural EMS agency out in the middle of the San Juans. We're the last set of islands before you run into Canada. Um, we practice very austere medicine. We're blessed to have a medical director who's also a green suitor, who's a lieutenant colonel in a forward support team that was in the former reserve unit that I was in. I've been here about 3 years. I've worked primarily in rural EMS most of my career. Um, I manage the day-to-day operations and provide field supervision and secondary ALS coverage. We primarily service this major island and about 8 smaller ones around us, and we use air resources quite a bit. We have a small critical access hospital here. Anything that's acute, high acuity trauma, cardiac sepsis, stroke, pediatrics, we actually fly them off island. So we also use the U.S. Coast Guard and Whidbey Island Naval Air Station on occasion, especially when we need to pick people off or the other air services are not flying. So we use 2 rudders from the mainland airlift and life flight, and then we have a fixed wing here on the island, which is Island Air Ambulance. So
Oh,
we do jump on the sheriff's boat on occasion to go to the outer islands along with the fire district, and we may either boat them all the way to the mainland to pass them off to either Bellingham or Anacortes Fire, or sometimes rare occasions are boated back here. But yeah, it's a pretty amazing place to work. It's dynamic, and yeah, we've got about 12 paid staff and about 25 volunteers. So
oh wow.
yeah, we have no mutual aid
Yeah.
out here.
Yeah, no, it's kind of hard to have mutual aid when it requires either a boat, a helicopter, or a carrier pigeon. Um, so you also have a pretty robust military background. I know we talked about we met. I think you were validating, or I was becoming a TC3 instructor through NEMT. You're validating the training, but also like you have a robust military career. Do you want to just give the elevator pitch on that one?
Sure. I was blessed enough to serve 32 years in uniform. I started in the infantry, went into special forces for a little bit, and then was in the honor guard, and then jumped into the National Guard and Reserves. But yeah, I ended up a 32-year career as the command sergeant major of the what was formerly known as the 396th Army Hospital, which is now the 313th Hospital Center in Vancouver. Yeah, had an amazing career. Had about 5 different MOSs. One of the things I started doing, I had obviously a simultaneous fire EMS career and military career at the same time, and
Hmm.
became very active in National Association of EMTs and was, an accredited instructor. Ran the Mystic from the reserve side on GBLM for a number of years for the reserve component. So yeah, I had a mobile training site of about 7 different instructors and taught everything from EMT up to TC3 or CMAS back, what it was called back in the day. But yeah,
Nice, man. Yeah, so you kind of check all the blocks for the things required to be an expert on Splints and Whiskey here. No
I'm
big
trying to figure out what I
deal.
want to do when I grow
I
up.
think Yeah, you know what? If you figure it out, please let me know because maybe it'll help me. Because never in a million years did I think I'd be doing a podcast. That's for daggum sure. So yeah, so for people who don't understand, like Island County in the state of Washington, or where the San Juans are, it is probably not. There are more austere locations such as like rural Wyoming in the middle, but again, the limiting factor is there are places up here that you work that cannot have access if the weather is black, as in we can't fly, period. The only way to do this is drive a boat there and render aid as best you can. I wanted to give a big shout out to the Whidbey Island Naval Air Station SAR guys. Wayne Pawlowski used to be up there. We spent many years when I was in the 160s trying to get up there to work with those guys, and that's a huge asset that I think is a kind of like a gold standard when it comes to the civil military kind of partnership that we could see. Um, and for those who are not aware, so Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, they fly the EA-18 Growler, which is the electronic warfare fighter jet. They also have a huge population of Poseidon anti-submarine aircraft that fly out of there. And they have 3 SH-60, or they might be MH-60 for the Navy variant, Seahawks that fly out of there. Part between the state of Washington and that agency to provide essentially, well, first up, air EMS or helicopter EMS services if the weather's bad. First up for search and rescue operations on pretty much the western side of the Cascades. And then also they're second up if airlift gets toned out and they're busy. So they're able to provide that flight paramedic ALS level air ambulance service on a military platform, and it's awesome. But as we on this show, TJ, it sounds like your military experience and what you're doing currently directly translates to the austere nature. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a pretty seamless transition starting up here. Um, Ironically, the whole way I found out about this organization is I was recruited by my medical program director, Dr. Joshua Corsa, who's the lieutenant colonel that's a commander of a forward surgical team in the 313th. Um, yeah, when my position was created, he sent me the announcement, and I was like, "Yeah, that was written for me." So yeah, it's been a pretty seamless transition. And I retired from the army about the exact same time that I started up here. So it's been pretty pretty uh, pretty easy.
Nice. So you said 9 islands, right?
Correct.
And of those 9 islands, how many people are living on those?
In the off season, like not right now, generally about 20,000, but it about doubles between uh, Memorial and Labor Day ish,
So the
Memorial and
nice
Labor Day.
weather season.
Yeah, yeah.
When it's nice out here in Washington.
So the ferries run out here from Anacortes about 4 or 5 times a day, and they hold about 300 people on each run, and they'll come over nonstop.
Okay.
So yeah,
So that's another thing with the state of Washington. So I tend to forget that where we live is pretty unique. We also like so the state of Washington, Washington State Ferries, will give them some love. They're the largest ferry system in the United States. They rival, I can't remember, I think um, Indonesia may have a larger one, but when it comes to actual ferry systems, it is one of the largest in the world, and a lot of that has to do with the island county where you're living at, because hey, they're completely married in there. So when it comes to like if you have somebody say like okay, airlift can't fly, the weather's bad, the Navy can't fly. If you have an ALS, like an advanced life support patient that you have to transport, then you basically have to wait on the ferry while you're sitting there at the ramp. Is that correct?
we can actually call in and commandeer the ferry. And historically, our agency not only did 911, but we used to do off-island transfers. It has not been unheard of here to like deliver babies in the back of an ambulance on the ferry. It's
That's
pretty
that's
rare
that's
anymore,
insane.
but it has happened more than once. Yeah, we will actually call the ferry
Right.
system and they have not only the one that goes back and forth, which is obviously larger, but they have what's called the inner island, which goes between Orcas, Lopez, and San Juan and Shaw. But we'll accommodate one of the ferries and actually take it over. Yeah,
Yeah.
so in case of a mass casualty incident or something like that, we're actually going to use that as to move patients.
Oh wow. So that being said, you said Bellingham's one of your closest. Where is so you have a small professional footprint. Where is the next largest professional footprint that provides mutual aid from?
Yeah. Well, the only time I've ever seen mutual aid done here was literally 3 years ago when I showed up on the island to do my interview in my testing assessment center. There was a large fire downtown that burned half of Friday Harbor down, burned a major
Oh,
building, two other businesses, um, and they had brought resources in from 4 different counties on the ferry, like fire engines, ladder trucks, all yeah, the whole 9 yards. EMS wise, luckily we've had some large patient incidents, but not to the point that we've had to bring anybody over. But in the county, there are 3 other departments that provide EMS services. 2 are ALS. So Orcas Fire in Rescue actually provides fire-based EMS and can transport. Lopez Island, same thing, fire-based ALS, and then Shaw does BLS transport. So if things got really, like an MCI level event, we probably could bring resources over. But again, we're all really small agencies. Like in my island, I staff the island with 1 medic unit with a
right.
paramedic and EMT on it. We can get out to up to 3, but normal minimum staffing of the day is 1. So I run ALS second call and stuff like that. But yeah, and the other departments are similar.
So you're sitting on call right now, basically as like a medical service officer all the time, essentially.
Correct.
Okay. Um, Another thing, I guess, how everything works. I know down here in Pierce County, I'm in King County now, but when I was in Pierce County, when I was a medic there, um, we had like obviously protocols. Like, do you guys have expanded protocols due to your nature?
We do, yeah. Dr. Corso, because he is so progressive, in the civilian setting, he's a trauma surgeon in Providence Everett Medical Center.
Okay.
And obviously does it in the Army as well. But yeah, so we do ultrasound in the field. We are in a sepsis study right now that we actually measure lactate and H&H through a point of care device. We have vents, drug assisted intubation. We do finger thoracostomies. Yeah, we do Dopplers, ultrasound. I'm trying to think what else I'm probably missing. Yeah, and our formulary is extensive.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry about that. I had a little brief internet hiccup, so I missed the very first portion of what you said you guys are protocols for, but still like finger thoracostomy. And say, do you say you have point of care ultrasound?
Yeah, we do through the butterfly system. So we do
Okay.
point of care ultrasound. We also have Dopplers, ventilators in the county. We do drug assisted intubation. Um, yeah, we're also in a study with Providence Everett Medical Center where we have a point of care device that measures lactate and H&H.
Okay.
So
Nice.
we can make
Um,
field decisions.
are you guys? I know we just got blood here or down in Pierce County. King County's been carrying it for a minute. Are you guys carrying blood yet, or looking at it?
Um, well, kind of. So our critical access hospital here carries 2 units in its hospital, but we would have to bring them here and admit them to get that administered, which is self-limiting. To the flight services, Airlift Northwest and Life Flight Network actually carry blood products, not whole blood. And currently, unfortunately, Island Air Ambulance does not carry blood at all. So we do make transport decisions, air transport decisions based on what the patient's need is, because if the patient needs blood and Island Air is here, but it's 22 minutes till a rotor gets out here, it might be worth the 22 minutes based on their need for blood products, and then wavering whether we're going to stop in the ER or whatever and transfer them later. So
Right.
yeah, we
And
do play around with it, but we're not carrying it as a service.
yeah, no, that's one of the things too. Like I talked to some about how we get whole blood, and there's obviously some hurdles. And after looking at how San Antonio's done it, Houston's done it, like I, I think there's more easier ways to get to yes than no, but also too when you're looking at a system like yours where it's so small, it's like, all right, how do we truly make this so the Bloodworks Northwest would be okay with borrowing a couple units for 2 weeks and then send them back to them? No, that's cool. Like how long have you guys been doing the field lactate and H&H?
I think we're on our second year.
Okay.
So yeah, we're using a device that's technically not FDA approved yet. It's in a clinical study. Yeah, and we're waiting for the results to come out. So
Oh,
it is definitely made treatment decision. So,
Nice.
and we
For
do pre-hospital antibiotics. I think I forgot to
Oh,
throw
oh
that.
wow, no, that's a rare one in the civil EMS space. For people who are unaware, what a lactate is, it's a measure of essentially lactic acid in your body, and it's an indicator for us on what level of perfusion. So how well are your cells getting oxygen from the red blood cells, and well the waste being removed. And it's a lot of times we use it as a tool to initiate resuscitation. Then H&H is hemoglobin and hematocrit. It's a measure of certain elements of your red blood cells. So again, when we look at, hey, I have a single resource of blood, do we need to use it on this person? It gives us a little bit better data set. And then also the lactate helps us to decide, are you in a shock state, which a shock state is your body's not getting enough oxygen to the end cells, and it's also not removing that carbon dioxide. So therefore, do I need, like, it's an indicator that we need to resuscitate you somehow, whether that's blood, fluid, or aggressive ventilation. That's cool that you guys have field ventilators as well. So when you intubate someone, do you put them right on the vent then?
Most of the time, yeah. The only rare circumstances is if we, to drug assisted intubation, and let's say we're passing the patient off to Island Air, and we're in town. It's only a couple of blocks. We're probably at the airfield before.
Right.
But it's recommended. Yeah, and we also carry IV pumps. So our medical director is pretty adamant about us using IV infusion pumps for a lot of the formulary that we carry. But a lot of it's time dependent. Like if we
Right.
can get it all set up, because when we pass them off, it's not like we can give them our vent, then they have to come off our vent and go back
Right.
on their vent. So sometimes it actually adds transport time instead of
Yeah.
takes it away. But
Are you
it is
guys?
definitely safer.
Yeah. No, it's 100%. Like I had to do a review on end-tidal CO2 and what it means, and like one of the studies I read was like people using a back valve mask. It's all over the place and adequate ventilation for them. So again, for the people who are not advanced life support providers, a ventilator is the machine we hook you up on. When we say drug-assisted intubation, we're taking away your ability to breathe on your own because we sedate you and then we paralyze you. And then we need to make sure that you breathe on your own. And the best way to do it is through a mechanical ventilator. We have handheld ones that are not as accurate. But again, when I have to realize that many of our listeners are non-medical, so we got to break it down Barney style sometimes. That being said, for Island Air and you guys, so interoperability is a big one that I like to focus on. So do you guys use different ventilators?
We do.
Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I think the only thing that's equivalent across the board is our IV pumps are the same.
okay. Yeah, and that so for people who are unaware, like that's one thing that we see a lot in the civil space, even the military space. Like the ventilator that we use in the Army is not the same ventilator that they use in the Air Force. So if I hand a patient off to the Air Force who's been in the Army system, a lot of times we got to swap all this equipment out because it's not universal. So like it's another thing that people don't realize. Like why interfacility transports? If I have a sick person that needs to go from one hospital to the next, if they're not super stable or stable enough for me to come in the hospital and change out all the lines, unplug this, replug that, like it adds a layer of complexity to things that we just assume all work everywhere, right?
Yeah, I'll give you a classic example. We use vacuum mattresses for spinal motion restriction, and I have them air tagged because they will go all over the place. And sometimes some services and other ERs are like, "Oh, cool, vacuum mattress," and don't read the label on it, and I have them air tagged.
Uh,
And the air services are wonderful about bringing them back, but
I,
it's funny.
I love that you have them air tagged. Let's see how did it end up in Idaho? I don't know. That's funny that sometimes it do be like that. So
Mhm.
you mentioned your guys' protocols. Actually, before I completely derail myself, are you guys critical care paramedics, or are you just traditional Washington State paramedics with this additional scope of practice?
I'd have to say the latter because Washington State technically doesn't add an additional endorsement at critical care paramedics. We're practicing at the critical care level.
Right.
What we're doing and Island Air doing, with an FBC credential is identically the same.
Yeah.
One of my paramedics actually works part-time with them. And 15 years ago, we used to be the same agency. We
Okay.
used to be part of Island Air. But we practice at that level. At the Washington State paramedic level, we
Yeah.
just have a pretty extensive set of protocols and QI system that allows that. Our medical director knows everybody by first name. It's that tight.
Well, that's one of those things about a system like your guys, like trust. You have a small system, which is a beautiful thing because then your medical director can know everybody and can bless off on all this stuff. That being said, since you are the responsible entity for essentially building that trust between them, what are some of the techniques that you're using to give your director that warm fuzzy for all your medics?
Ironically enough, even with technology, we still today, he allows us to contact him directly 24/7 if he's available. So you can literally call up Dr. Corso on a case. Hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is my thoughts. Well, what are your thoughts? A lot of times it's not required, but yeah, he's actually available nearly 24/7 unless he's, operating on somebody or, the Army's got him, engaged otherwise. But yeah, he's pretty phenomenal in that regard. So one is we have pretty old school, what's considered to be Washington State or an EMS, pretty old school online medical direction, strangely enough,
Yeah.
even though we have incredible amounts of technology. Um, I don't think any of us get enough reps in with ultrasound, for example. So sometimes we'll do old school telemetry, like FaceTiming, like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. What are your thoughts? Type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Actually,
that's probably part of it. And then he does case reviews every month. So
okay.
he'll come nearly every month and go over cases of the previous month with the paramedics individually. So we get some one-on-one time with him, and then he does the exact same thing in the evening on the same day with all the EMTs,
Okay.
all the volunteer EMTs. So yeah, we get a lot of FaceTime with and he teaches with me. So we've just recently implemented like the state's paramedic emergency airway course,
Okay.
and yeah, and so he does obviously all my trauma. Like I have a tactical emergency casualty care class next weekend, and he's obviously one of the instructors. So, but yeah, we get a lot of FaceTime with him, luckily. So
Nice. Yeah. Actually, your point of care ultrasound that brought that cued my memory. I appreciate that. And for those who are not familiar with what port of care ultrasound is, essentially, I have my iPad. This is not an iPad; it's a book. Actually, I have one. Hold on, let me see right here. So comes in a nice little case such as this. And there, hey, Butterfly, you want to sponsor us? I got you. This little box has a probe in it that plugs into an iPad or an iPhone or whatever. And then we can take a gander on your insides anywhere in the world. That being said, what are you guys using your point of care ultrasound for? I guess we'll give the broad stroke.
yeah, we'll start from the fundamentals. Primarily, one, and I'll use a classic example, is potential termination of resuscitation efforts during a cardiac arrest.
That's a good one.
So to determine if your heart actually has any heart activity during an arrest. So about 2 months ago, I had one of the longest codes that I've ever run at Roche Harbor, which is our most northern part of this island, in the grocery store.
Oh,
Said over the years has had numerous occasions where we have really high, incredible cardiac arrest survival rates here. But we were resuscitating somebody that did the traditional walked in, clutched their chest, hit the floor, had a bunch of bystander CPR. It takes us like 15 or 20 minutes to get up
right.
there. Make a long story short, we were like an hour and 15 minutes, which we normally do about the 45 to 60-minute range. But we had consulted with Dr. Corsa a couple of times and actually got orders. We had run through our protocol a couple of times, but his carbon dioxide or his entitled CO2 was still really high,
Hmm.
even that prolonged. And I actually was working with another paramedic and kind of did it in reverse order for whatever reason. I terminated, so I stopped the code, and my partner had taken the ultrasound. She's like, I have a heart activity. I was like, no, you don't. It's like, no, really, I do. I was like, no, you don't. She's like, no, really, I do. Come look. So I look, and his left ventricle is beating.
Oh,
So obviously, I'd stopped CPR and dumped all that coronary perfusion pressure. I should have had her check and then terminated. But so I had to get everybody back on the chest. Um, and so we had a spontaneous return to circulation of somebody I
oh wow.
wouldn't expected it from. So yeah, and it was well over an hour into the arrest, and then we transported them.
Well, that's yeah, that's
So
so
that's the primary reason that
yeah,
most pre-hospital systems use. We've been using Doppler for a number of years here, just for confirming good adequate chest compressions.
right.
But yeah, that one is to definitively use it for termination of a cardiac arrest. That's number one. The other one is probably a fast
Yeah.
exam. So yeah.
And for those who are not familiar, FAST is focused something sonography technology or trauma. Yeah, I'm really real good at acronyms. Essentially, we're looking in your belly and your for free floating fluid that we're going to assume is blood until proven otherwise. For you guys on your fast, like I have my own theory on or my own why I use an e-fast. What are you guys using it for as a like decision making tool?
Primarily whether they're going to go to our critical access hospital, which is a level 4, which for the audience in Washington State, there's 4 levels of trauma. A level 4 means you
Hmm.
takes very low acuity trauma. And the big thing out here is in a level 4 trauma to include our hospital, there's no surgeon in the building. They don't have one. The only surgeons that come out over here twice a month to do colonoscopies and hernia repairs. So on a pre-scheduled basis. So there's not an actual surgeon. So it's left to the attending trauma physician of the hospitals that has advanced trauma life support skills. Um, so the primary one, especially with a combination like free floating fluid, and if their H&H is off, they probably shouldn't be coming here because we also do the transfers. And like any critical access hospital, they do a phenomenal job with what they have. But generally speaking, we have the autonomy to fly somebody directly to a level 1 or 2 trauma center. Whereas if somebody's admitted into the hospital here, they have to be admitted, worked up. They have to find a doctor and a bed in a facility, which the average length of stay is between 3 and 5 hours.
Oh, okay.
So they're basically sitting on and trying to stabilize somebody for 3 to 5 hours, or we could actually send them direct. So
Right.
we use a primary like, are you actively bleeding, or are you showing signs and symptoms of shock, and do you need to go to a level 1 or 2 right now, or can you go to a level 4 and
Right.
be observed for a while?
Yeah, no, and that's kind of like that's to be fair, like that's exactly the model I teach people for military medicine. Like, hey, a fast exam is I'm not going to probably change much of my clinical treatment, but I'm going to determine which facility you probably need to go to. Like, if I have a positive fast, I'm probably going to fly you to the first surgical entity there is, because if you need emergent surgery, we can get it done there. But yeah, that's kind of cool to hear that you guys are using it in the same model. Are you guys using it all for lung slide?
We do,
Yeah.
yeah. We also take a look, to rule out tension pneumothoraces. So yeah.
Yes. So for again for people who are unfamiliar, if I take my ultrasound probe, which it's remote, I put it right here on the ribs, get in between the rib, I can see if your lung is moving back and forth. If I have somebody who's collapsed the lung, or you have air building up in there, that's an indicator that I can need to either decompress you with a needle, or we can, like you guys have finger thoracostomy, you can actually open up the chest with your finger and go through there. So for my non-ALS people out there, that helps them understand that. But yeah, it's also are you using it at all for like trending?
I we don't see it as much, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
Probably should, but don't.
Yeah, that's always been one of my things for like if I find fluid in the belly, then can I trend that? And if it's getting worse, that's going to make a lot of determination. Like, do I stay or should I stay or should I go now? That's the as the old song goes. Um, you made actually I want to go back to that the cardiac arrest that you guys worked for an hour and 15 hour 30 minutes. They spontaneously came like they or how many times did you shock them?
3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah,
Did they get return of circulation after defibrillation, or was it just it happened?
it happened.
Oh man.
Matter of fact, I think probably what the definitive where I could pinpoint was we had transitioned from an IGL to innovation.
Okay.
Um, Not that the IGL had any issues and wasn't registering just fine. We were just ruling out H's and T's at that point, and yeah, opted to remove the IGL and intubate the patient, and it did seem to make a difference.
Huh, go figure. Yeah.
Perfusion wise.
Did you when you did the iGel? So there's a budget. So for again, people who are unfamiliar, the iGel is essentially a blind airway tool that we put into your mouth that blocks a bunch of stuff, but it's not definitive because if you vomit, you can still pass fluid past that and down into your larynx and your trachea and get down the road aspiration pneumonia. When we upgrade you to what we call an intubation or an actual definitive airway, it's a tube with a cuff that blocks that ability to happen. When you guys did the iGel changeover, did you do it one of the blind techniques, or did you pull it and do direct laryngoscopy?
Yeah, excellent question. So our system, we're required to lead with suction and to do VL on first attempts, which is a video scope. So we have a Ranger glide scope that has a camera.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we have to introduce suction first, and then actually transition it. So we removed it while the camera was in place.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, and so yeah, we're required to use VL on first attempt.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, to be working for an agency that has video laryngoscopy again. For the people unfamiliar, when you watch all your ER shows when people take the big blade and they stick down someone's throat, like essentially you put a camera on the end of that, you give me a little screen, it's the cheat code. It's not cheating, it's using technology, but it allows you to intubate someone so much easier than the traditional way. And that's awesome that your agency leads with that, because there's been times where I had to work a patient on Crystal Mountain and it was like, I don't really want to intubate this person on the side of the mountain. I know the helicopter's coming with a glide scope. Hey guys, when you get here, we're gonna intubate them. That's super rad. All right, shifting gears here. So you mentioned that you do some tactical emergency casualty care training as well. Obviously, you work in an austere county, austere location. Usually your tech per se is tactical emergency casualty care protocols is probably not something you're always worried about. So where are you doing? Are you doing that training for your county or elsewhere?
Yeah, great question. So going back into my green suiter days, I was blessed enough to be credentialed by the Army to teach what they called CMAS back at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
tactical combat casualty care, and we did it for every reserve soldier and deploying soldier. So I was doing it there, and then at the time, the National Association of EMTs had a crosswalk credential. If you were a TC3 instructor, you could also teach the civilian version.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I worked down south in the Vancouver area, I was actually the lead tactical paramedic for the Vancouver SWAT team for about
Okay.
5 years. So I served on their team and did it on both arenas and volunteered to get shot at for free. Um, so yeah, so I started teaching not only locally. I've been blessed my career not only to serve soldiers and have people come back like, hey, the skills you taught me, saved so and so's life and that sort of stuff, but I was asked by the association once to teach the very first tactical emergency casualty care class in Canada.
Oh, nice.
So a colleague of mine, a local colleague of mine here, Joe Pratt, and I actually went to Canada and taught the first tech class for the entire country,
Cool.
where they did trainer, and it's countrywide now. But yeah, so currently I serve as like I don't have enough to do. I serve as the volunteer education coordinator for NEMT. So I help the association in our state help training centers and agencies grow programs.
Right.
You know, the trauma stuff is one of about 15 or 16 different educational programs the association offers, but that's where Sam and I met each other.
Right.
And now for the Department of Defense, the Defense Health Agency is kind of taking that curriculum back over. So, but yeah, so I still teach statewide, help agencies grow, and I still do travel on occasion. But yeah, right now with the tech class, we normally here in our county, I'm the only ALS level instructor besides my physician for the entire county.
Mm.
I do all of the ALS credentialing and education for every paramedic, every registered nurse, and every physician in
Oh,
this
wow.
entire county. Um, in addition to Dr. Corso when he's here. So in our county, we generally alternate PHTLS,
Mm-hmm.
so pre-hot, the standard trauma stuff that EMTs and paramedics get, with tech every other year.
Okay.
So the last time we held the tech class was 2 years ago, and now we're going to hold one next weekend. So I generally alternate.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important thing for people to delineate as well. Like I know in the military we've seen this. Like we hyper focus on trauma to the point where I can't remember if it was a 91 Whiskey, I think was a trauma specialist. I think 68 Whiskey went back to healthcare
Yeah.
specialist. Like the emphasis of trauma, trauma, trauma. It's like, hey guys, there's a lot of other things besides trauma that we deal with. Like sure, trauma makes some good TV. It makes some good copy of pictures and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like you brought it up, that phenomenal cardiac arrest save. The fact that you guys are carrying antibiotics in your system shows that your medical director is acutely aware of like, hey, antimicrobials or microbial infection down the road causes significant fallout in people's quality of life. I guess where I'm getting at this is how in your journey throughout this profession have you emphasized the importance of the basics and also the not sexy medicine?
I would have to probably at least here, 25, you know, of our team members are volunteers.
Hmm.
This county and this agency has always been founded by volunteer response.
Hmm.
Our volunteers here, in their first year when they're in field training, have to be on the station in an ambulance, but otherwise they're responding to private vehicle to
Okay.
calls from home or work. So for decades, this island and the surrounding ones around us survived by the only paid staff were the paramedics at issue sprint rigs at home,
Hmm.
and the volunteers go to the station, grab an ambulance, and meet them at a call. So it really had to do with, we don't overlook the basics. The other thing is our medical director and I also really put a lot of stock and train our EMTs to do the entire state scope of practice in its entirety.
Hmm.
Our EMTs have a medical formulary of like 8 or 10 medications.
Oh, wow.
We don't have any hesitancy to have them transport BLS, where an ALS assessment might not even be performed.
Right.
So yeah, we enable all of our EMTs, and we model our field training program to make them, be like the attendant in charge of a BLS ambulance when they're done. So the comfort level is the same whether they're paid or not, because the community doesn't care.
Right. That's
And
awesome.
recently on our island, our volunteer, well, we have a combination fire department here, and they actually March 1st stopped responding to EMS calls, with the exception of rescues and cardiac arrests. They are letting their EMS license lapse at the end of this month.
Oh, wow.
So we don't get any fire department support outside of like major extremes.
Yeah.
So we're left to our own
And
devices, if you will.
that's a pretty big vote of confidence as well. That being said, so are you guys a traditional third service then, or are you
We are,
okay?
yes. And for the rest of you to try to compare, we're a taxing base called the Public Hospital District, and there's only like 6 of them statewide. It's the weirdest thing ever. We don't
Hmm.
have a hospital. We pay into one, but
Right.
we don't have one. So for everybody else, if you looked at a nationwide model, almost everybody knows we are designed very, very, very similarly to King County Medic One.
Yep. So yeah, for other agencies that are out there, so Boston EMS is another one. I think New Orleans EMS are third. So when we say third service, you think of the primary two services as police and fire. Oftentimes your EMS is rolled into the fire service. Some have it rolled in the law enforcement service, but very rarely do you have a traditional like publicly funded third service, which King County Medic One is also one of those. So that's cool. And that's one thing I've noticed too about the traditional third service EMS agencies is they are usually the ones that are leading on the forefront. Like your protocols that you just listed off, the stuff that you're working on, that's some pretty progressive stuff when it comes to the EMS space. And that's awesome to hear. So kudos to you guys up there doing that stuff, and hopefully that you're pushing the good gospel all around. Because one of the things about Washington that always has I'll say confused me is how the EMS fiefdoms work around here in each county.
Oh yeah, and even in our own county, like I said, there are 4 ALS there are 5 agencies total. None of us all operate the same.
Of course
So
not.
I still even work per diem in Lopez, our neighbors about 15 minutes across from us, to keep my skills up, and their system is completely different.
Yeah.
So they have 3 paramedics plus a chief that basically respond from home in SUVs and the volunteers, kind of like we used to years ago, and that's how they function every day. So I do it because you kind of have to be on your game. It's like the wild, wild west out there,
Right.
and they have no hospitals.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So
So,
you're like, do you feel comfortable going on a ferry? Do I feel comfortable leaving at home? They have a University of Washington clinic that's open during office hours that has very low threshold for anything. So it's unique.
yeah. No, that to be honest, like I like to call that pucker factor medicine. Like, and me personally, I love that. Like, it makes me like when I worked at Crystal, like we were. I think the closest ALS rig we had was coming out of Buckley, which is about an hour, if not more.
Yeah.
So we didn't have weather. Like you're sitting there managing, and it's like you have the ski patrol up there is phenomenal, but like you are it. Like if you may have a doctor on the hill if you're lucky, but like you are it. You're the show. Like the buck stops with you. Like is it absolutely frightening? 100%. But man, is it like that adrenaline rush you get after the fact. That's probably a little broken here, but hey, whatever, aren't we all? Um,
Yeah, test your skill set for sure.
yeah, exactly. You know, it forces you to think outside the box, and also, like, I think the biggest thing about I'll ask you this, like, so you've worked in this pretty austere environment for a while now. Have you realized, like, hey, there, like, yes, there are things to be concerned about, but for the most part, you have time to stop and think about what you're doing.
Yeah, think methodically out here. I'm pretty blessed. The paramedics in my system right now have anywhere between 2 and 30 years of experience.
Hmm.
They're going to retire from here for the most part. Even though that we work in an austere environment, we still are with patients for a minimum of a half an hour, if not more,
Hmm.
even if we call for an air service, unless we have them in town in Friday Harbor.
Right.
Um, we do a lot of things methodically. We have a lot of checklists, a lot of key performance indicators, and things like that. But uh, rarely is it here so black and white that it's textbook. There's always something unique. And here, people come out here for two reasons: to tour,
Hmm.
or to realize after they've toured, when they grow old, they're going to retire here. So we have a extremely large geriatric population that are on, 4 or 5 medical conditions, 15 different medications, and they've fallen. And then, you're always like, rarely is it the mechanical fall, like tripped over my own 2 feet. It's normally I felt weak, you know, and then you find that they're pressure dumped or they're in some arrhythmia or something's off, or they've been septic for 3 days and couldn't figure out what to have a fever type of stuff. So rarely out here is it just black and white.
Yeah.
Our providers do a really good job of really getting down like what is causing this.
Yeah, and that, to be honest, like, that's one of those things I look at, kind of special operations medicine and the military. We're trying to get these guys to think. You know what I think we should do is we should propose that, hey, we should be sending people for rotations up to the islands, because you're going to get the acuity, you're going to get that critical care, you're going to get ICU level patients that probably shouldn't be at home right now, but guess what, they are. Um, and that's one of those hardest things to replicate in medicine. Like, I would, like, when in a training modality, the ultimate, if I could get it to work in a perfect world, the medic would be on the bus to bring the trauma patient in. They would go through the resuscitation bay, follow that patient up to the OR, follow that patient to the PACU for step down, follow them to the surgical ICU, and then they get to watch that patient's treatment for the next month. And then, okay, we need you to be able to replicate all of that in the field. Ready, go. Um,
That is really ironic. You share that because your sentiments years ago when I was a student at the Sergeant Major course in the academy,
mhm.
I actually wrote a position paper back when the Army came out with the critical care flight paramedic program, and I thought it was fantastic. But the one thing that really stood out to me, because I was doing civilian and military medicine, was there's nothing in your pipeline. It's all based on credentialing, nothing
Yes,
for the sustainment part. And you
yes,
know as well as I do, this even the standard 68 whiskey, and how the Army keeps trying to put it back on the unit's responsibility for sustainment, where that's not possible. Yet all these mystics have never closed. So I had wrote a position paper. One of my final papers I actually wrote on the sustainment of the critical care flight paramedic program, and if they didn't, incorporate clinicals and incorporation with local, hospitals and EMS agencies, it would not be successful because is a matter of fact, in the class you and I were in, the Washington State National Guard medical director was in there. He's like, I would not have any, military provider RSI in my system
yep,
unless they were working somewhere else.
yep. No, I remember
So
that. Yeah, I remember that clearly now. Ironically, and that was always my thing. So I was like, my FPC, I've let it lapse because I have really no reason to maintain it. I was Mike 0013, so I was the 13th military flight
oh
paramedic.
wow.
Because I took it. That was when they transitioned. They changed to a military designator because, like, I was not the 13th flight paramedic. I was the 13th of that batch, apparently.
Right.
But I am number 36 for TPC, so I'll throw that one out there.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I was a beta tester for that one, so that's fun. But yeah, no, that was my thing. Like, because when I was with the 160th, like, yeah, we were paramedics, we were flight paramedics. We did it before Big Army did. But that was always one of my issues was like, hey guys, like, we're doing a crash course without any clinical time, without patient contacts that are truly sick. When I send these guys to medical proficiency training, unless they're switched on enough to build their own adventure where they get the reps, like, they're not getting the clinical experience to actually be a critical care anything.
Yeah.
That's one of the hard ones. Like, so for like, because your guys' system, so I'll pick that apart. Since you guys are doing a lot of critical care work up there, what is your medic pipeline? And are you running dual medic rigs or EMT medic rigs?
Awesome you ask. So, with the exception of one of our senior paramedics and myself, all of our paramedics were initially trained through Harborview's paramedic training program through
Mm-hmm.
King County. Primarily because with their 11-month program, they're actually doing rides on day one while they're integrated with class versus the traditional paramedic program. They're at phases where you're like classroom, clinicals, internship, it's all integrated.
Right.
And the amount of reps, it's really hard to argue. And I've taught with I've been I've been in adjunct faculty positions in probably a half dozen paramedic programs across the United States. So I'm not just comparatively our agency in our county, focuses on the Harborview program, primarily because the amount of reps that they get in, kind of like what you mentioned before. We'll take my paramedic that we graduated 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So she had served as an EMT in our system for 15 years,
Oh wow.
and she's a physician's associate on the side. So it's not like she doesn't see patients, but
Right.
not even in hospitals and even like in level twos, as a PA is not the same as doing pre-hospital medicine.
Right.
She'll be the first one to tell you. So we set her to Harborview's program 2 years ago. Um, and then one of the things I was charged with when I started on board here was to develop a field training evaluation program because we don't have new paramedics go through our system very often.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually took us about 4 months to get her, a month longer than what I anticipated, to get her to where her clinical decision making, and it's not their micro clinical skills, and same thing with special operations medics or 68 whiskeys. It's not the micro skills, it's not the innovations, it's not the IV starts. It's okay. Do you recognize, you know, the sepsis signs that you're staring at? And the fact that they can't be serviced here, and have you asked for those resources and all the other logistics. So here it's very commonly like 10 or 20% medicine,
Yep.
good 20 or 30% social work, and then
Yep.
the other logistics it actually takes. You're managing volunteers, used to be also with the fire department, and then like the logistics go behind the clinical decision making, kind of like when your light bulb comes on, like
Right.
you're seeing it in. So it took us a while, and she's a phenomenal provider now. But we are sending another paramedic, another EMT through their paramedic program in August. Again, has spent about 8 to 10 years in our system as an EMT, and she's one of our paid EMTs. Great candidate, but we struggle with that.
Yep.
Not only us, but all the Puget Sound agencies. So um, one of our senior medics, who's a Tacoma Community College grad, retires in August. So yeah, we struggle with turnover.
Yeah.
Like because three of us are ready to do for retirement. So it is something we struggle with.
No, that's kind of like the model is, it's so hard to replicate experience. And then like the lessons learned, and unfortunately, like you can't. Like, I would say I've learned so much more from the mistakes. I've learned so much more from the
Mhm.
patients that have died. I've only had couple like. Well, the thing too is like I like that your medical director does kind of your case reviews too, because I've always been a huge proponent of what are the third, fourth, fifth level effects. What could I do better pre-hospital or at point of injury that would improve recovery time and quality of life down the road? Because I think that's like you hit the nail on the head. In a system like yours, a system like the military, like the clinical medicine, the micro skills that you mentioned, the procedural based medicine is not where you make your money. It's like, hey, if I delay mobile, like if I delay calling comms, the comm center saying, hey, we need a helicopter for 10 minutes, that could be the make or break difference between life and death, and or by the way, kidney failure, slow multi-organ dysfunction syndrome where they just die a slow painful death for 6 months, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, like since you are in such an instructional space, like how much of the lessons learned from your austere environments do you pay forward to some of these classes where you may have a heavier urban population of medics or firefighters or cops that like, hey guys, like just because you have it easy now, it's like there are situations you may run into.
I think anybody that knows me knows I'm pretty transparent. I very commonly share, my lessons learned and my experiences over time. And the one thing, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way, that I will tell you about, being blessed enough to care for somebody else,
Hmm.
is the human body is so dynamic. Just when you think you've seen it all, or you've got some pathophysiology, route down, the human body humbles you.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you know, and one of the things, going back to my medical director, every month he makes us pick the top five, both at the ALS and BLS level. What are the five differential diagnoses you think are going on with this patient? And kind of leads us down your choose your own adventure route. And sometimes you're like, what?
Yeah.
I would have never, seriously? Like, how in the hell? And then, you start reading up on that particular type of condition. And yeah, a lot of, especially with the lot of more complex, patients up here, there, it's not so black and white.
Oh no, and yeah, let me tell you, cancer likes to present in some really weird ways. um, so yeah, I had a running joke. I don't remember where I was, and it's not really a running joke. I'd say like I would much rather take an acute polytrauma patient over a non-specific fever that's been there for 3 days, 4 days. It's like,
Yep.
and I think that's one of the big things what we fail to think about in medicine. Like, and you guys are doing it day in and day out up there, like where you're dealing with, hey, we got this non-specific fever for that's been for 3 days, and oh, by the way, they may crash when they're sitting in your hands, and how the heck are you going to manage that? So like, hey, kudos to what you guys are doing up there first and foremost, and B, like
Thanks.
it's awesome to see you taking that experience, paying it forward. That being said, since you're in the King County Medic One training pipeline, Eric Tim's a buddy of mine,
Mhm.
so I'll drop in and say hello. So shout out to Eric, good job down there. Um, are you guys feeding in lessons learned into their system as well, or are they kind of like,
Yeah, they've had a huge change in their philosophy, not only since, and I'm sure most people are aware Dr. Cope's passed
hmm
just recently, but they, for years, will be transparent to tell you that they taught one way, and it was the Seattle Fire way.
yep.
There are about 8 provider groups in King County, plus 4 other counties that actually put students into their program.
Hmm,
They are gracious enough, not. They also take providers from Snohomish, Whatcom, Jefferson, and San Juan counties.
okay,
So one of the ways that I give back is I actually dedicate time to teaching their paramedic training program.
okay,
So I teach a lot of the airway, cardiac, and trauma stuff. I actually started PHLS in their paramedic training program for the first time ever.
cool.
So I'd like to give back, but they are completely receptive. And one of their whole things about that they've been, you know, for their entire life, you know, lifetime, is they encourage graduates to come back and to teach back and to give
Cool.
back to the program that gave to them. So, but yeah, I actually go in and help, teach, because I have an active stake in, in their outcomes and,
Yeah,
their graduates. So
no, that's
yeah.
cool. No, that's huge. I think that's a big lesson that we all like. Well, a lot of me sitting here on this side of this microphone is I'm trying to like, hey, I've got some lessons learned, or I got other people with lessons learned. How can we pay that forward? Since we're getting closer towards the end of time, and I'm sure my children are about to turn into little Tasmanian devils. Um, since we focus a lot on training, and I know this, I'm not going to say give me your top 10, give me top five, but like, what are some of the biggest pearls of wisdom you can impart on the next generation of pre-hospital medics on just how to be medics?
I have to say, first and foremost, I've been doing this since 1996, and I am still constantly studying something. We make jokes about what your and my EMT textbook looked like when we went through initial class and what it
Right.
looks like now. And the paramedic stuff is in volumes, literally volumes now, instead of one textbook.
Mm-hmm.
One is, and I know this may sound a little cliche, is become a lifelong learner. The human body is constantly evolving, constantly changing, and the scope of what I was doing is what Virginia calls a cardiac tech, or an intermediate 999 back in 1997, is much different than EMTs today. Their
Yep.
scope at the EMT level is astronomical.
Yep.
Um, in some systems they would call them advanced EMTs or paramedic level ones or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
one, never stop learning. Always be studying something. If you think that you've got it all down, you need to humble yourself and kind of go back and don't ever forget where you came from.
Yeah. Oh, and you hit humility. That's another big one. Like I'm a huge, I was humbled. Fortunately, I was humbled very early in my career, and it made me realize, like, hey, dude, you know nothing. Like, get back in the books. What are some of the ways that you've like, so without people dying, that's obviously the easiest way to humble someone real quick. What are some of the ways that you find effective in training to build that humility in people?
Um, use of case presentations. The other thing is I am huge in patient safety.
Mm-hmm.
We use checklists and apps, and I completely break down. Back when I started, you had to memorize protocols. Like our protocols in my system right now are 258 pages.
Yeah.
It's unrealistic and unsafe to think that somebody's going to memorize every protocol, every drug, every dose. That's not. There's nothing advantageous, and the rest of the healthcare industry doesn't do it.
Yep.
So one of the things I do humility wise is I make people use checklists.
Mm-hmm.
I make people talk out loud, and I make people verify it, and I make people med check each other.
Awesome.
Yeah,
No, that,
because
that
we're human.
yeah. Well, and that's like the old 2 o'clock in the morning math that all like we all. I think that's an important thing too. Is as paramedics, as anybody who is above, well, to be fair, licensed or has gone through medical training, like understanding what our limitations are, and then two, also identifying what are the I need to act now conditions. I've got my short list. It's not a very long one. Go take a BLS class and they'll tell you about it. But like at the end of the day, that's where I ask, like, hey, you have time to think. Like aviation's a fine example. Whenever like you look at a tragedy, like usually they pull out the emergency checklist immediately and they start ticking that off, because when you need to go not thinking mode, you should have at least a backstop. So that's awesome. So again, checklists are great. And yeah, good luck measure like it. And I think that's another big one too. Like I've seen military medics do this. They try to memorize like the Ranger Medic Handbook or something like that, and then they don't actually reference it when, hey guys, like you should probably take a second, a tactical pause. Like yeah, you're not doing it at the breach point, but the minute you can open a book, you probably should do that. All right, so we're coming to the end here. I'll turn it over to you for your final parting words of wisdom, pearls, whatever you want to do, man. The floor is yours.
Again, first and foremost, to both you and Liz, thank you so much for having me on. I kind of like you never thought you'd be connecting a podcast.
Right.
This is I think the second one I've ever done my entire lifetime. I don't like hearing myself.
No, same with
Um,
you.
so yeah, thank you very much for having me on. Thanks to all the fathers out there. Happy Father's Day. And the biggest thing is don't ever stop learning. Yeah, if I did share anything, is my chief even makes comments like you're constantly, not only am I the training officer, but I am constantly learning something myself. So
Yeah, that's the key. Is take that call that you don't think went well, find something about it, and pick it apart. All right. Well, TJ Bishop, good sir. Thank you very much. Crushing it up there in San Juan Island. That's like the model you're working up there. Like I think I might try to send some guys up to you to do ride-alongs if we can. But again, thank you for your time. Appreciate you coming on a Sunday. Super awesome. We're gonna get this hung as soon as we can. And then again, last bit of business. Splints and Whiskey is brought to you by Life Autonomous Care Consultants. Go ahead and check them out. TJ, thanks again, man. We'll talk soon.
absolutely,
And we'll see you on the other side.
peace, brother. Thanks.